Hi, everyone. Welcome to November's Your Handmade Business TV, YHB TV, that we've been calling it. This is our once a week discussion of our theme for the month and all sorts of topics related to makers. I'm Sharon. I'm the director of Academy of Handmade, along with Isaac Watson. Together, we are here to help you guys tackle some of the things that you've been dealing with in your business and generate some good discussion. I did want to note that last month, our October YHB TV, we condensed the best of parts of it and put it into our podcast. So if you know the YHB, Your Handmade Business podcast, you will get a special bonus episode from this last month that is all just sort of the best of YHB TV. So if I know some of you can't make it every week and some of you process better, listening to us as you're sewing or whatever, instead of feeling the pressure to keep up in the chat, I would suggest checking that out because that has a lot of tasty morsels in it. Your thoughts, Isaac? Oh, when we did it the whole time. So we have like a transcription service that Isaac uses, and it generated, what it thinks our conversation was for all of those. And we had the best time going back and forth, like laughing hilariously. I don't know why it tickled me so much of all the wrong things that it said. Like, it just was crazy bananas.
It was the best Monday giggle fest I think I've had in a long time. It was much needed. So this transcription service is normally fantastic, but I've never transcribed a live video before. It's always been audio that I've recorded, and it got everything wrong. And it's this, computer-based transcription. It's not like somebody on the other end doing it. So we had a couple fun ones. There was, first of all, like the very first thing, it thought we said, welcome to YHB TV.
Yes. So it was, yes, calling us out that we're whiter than HGTV is what I feel like.
And then I think Sharon at some point mentioned Craftcation conference in it, and it thought that she said Crack Fusion conference.
Yes. It says, if you cannot join live to the holiday from a woman, are you saying that you can still wash it afterwards?
I'm glad you pulled them up there.
Yeah. So those are some gems. So go ahead. The link is in the chat area that Isaac posted there in case you guys were wondering, needed direction on how to find it. But this month we're talking about self-care. And last week we talked about self-care at craft shows and how to take care of yourself and keeping you from getting burnt out, because those are incredibly exhausting. This week, we're going to talk about listening to your body. So we'll do that in just a moment. I do want to give a shout out for next week, which is we're going to talk about trying to get a self-care routine and plan for yourself in place. And we have a special guest, Carrie Sweeney Burke of Handmade Success, and she also has Zened Out Business. So we're going to be chatting with her more about that. Isaac will not be with us, but Carrie and I will be helping you. So
I'm kind of bummed I have to miss that one.
Yeah, no, I think there's going to be a lot of good practical information for helping you to take care of yourself. So
I have to say, I'm actually really excited about this topic. We've had inklings around talking about this for quite some time now in various ways. But as I've done the podcast interviews for this month, and as we've been working through our YHB TV topics and in our private community, the things we're talking about there, it's actually, I feel like this is really needed and really we hope it'll help. I don't know. It's good stuff to talk about that most people don't usually talk about. So
no, I think so too, and I think it can be really easy to ignore. I think self-care is like a buzzword that like, you know, happens all year round, but then like when it gets to this time of year, it's really easy to like not pay attention to that. So
yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. I'm hoping people are joining us. We had a little technical snafu, so I hope people are going to the right place. But if they aren't, then
you know what? I should make sure to extra call the audience to this session.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. So this month's theme is self-care. And today in particular, we wanted to talk about listening to your body. And it may sound like we're going to get a little woo with things, but I don't think that's the case. Because we have had some conversations between ourselves and also just conversations with other makers and people in our community. And this seems like something that is often overlooked. It's really, really easy for us to get caught up in this always on go, go, go culture. You must be highly productive. You must be super busy all the time because that's how you define your success. And I think it's really important for us to remember that a handmade business is not a Silicon Valley startup. We are human beings, not robots. And, you know, we're not really making salaries, really good salaries that are, you know, warranting 60, 70, 80-hour work weeks. We need to take care of ourselves because so much, I mean, we said this last week, I've said it on the podcast, I say it all the time, handmade business is incredibly personal. You are your business. And so if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not taking care of your business.
Totally. I would add, even if you were a Silicon Valley startup, you might want to ease up on yourself.
I'm not condoning that. Let's be clear here. That's just how it is.
Yeah, totally. I think that one of the things that it's very easy to get in the way of yourself with not taking care of your body and stuff is that when you're in that go, go, go mode, it's very easy to see all of the stuff that you have to do and ignore everything else to sort of accomplish that, which in some ways is good, right? Like you want to have a single focus of like getting to the end and you can't be distracted. Like I can't have things getting in the way of this, you know, right? At some level, that's like not a totally bad thing. But if it's coming at the expense of your health and well-being, then it's like, what is even the point of that as well too?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, your body is a complex, intelligent machine that kind of knows what it's talking about. There are a lot of things going on inside that you aren't aware of just because that's how your body works. And so sometimes we just forget to stop and listen to it and to take a moment and slow down or pay attention to what your needs are in a way that will improve whether it's your physical health or your mental health, whatever it is. So there was this part of the thing that spurred all of this was a story that one of our community members shared a while back. Her name is Alyssa Newton, and I did not write down her shop name. Do you know off the top of your head what her shop is, Sharon?
I do not. She is in here, so right, she's in the chat somewhere. Alyssa.
Shame on me.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm really distracted right now because my dog keeps rubbing his butt up against the TV stand, and I just keep feeling like everyone can hear the dog. Whatever. It's just like horrifying. Delilah Ray Designs. That is what her shop.
Delilah Ray Designs. There we go. Hi, Alyssa.
Really cute, like zippered pouches and fun things to stick your makeup in.
Awesome. Well, Alyssa was unable to join us on video today. We asked her to come up here and share her story, but she gave us permission to convey it to you, because I think it's her experience is kind of an extreme, catastrophic example of not listening to your body, but I think it serves as a good like, whoa, this is important kind of thing. So I'm going to just go ahead and read what she said. She says, 5+ years ago, I was juggling everything just perfectly. Baked in the morning, got the kids to school, day job, sewing and shipping in the afternoon, dinner on the table, then staying up all hours to clean my house. Weekends were for yard work. Then my son was diagnosed on the autistic spectrum. I was at his school daily advocating for him. Doctors and therapy appointments weekly. I knew I should let some things go, but I just revved my engine and kept up at the same pace. Well, my body had enough. One morning, while handing my son his backpack from the trunk of my car, I lost consciousness. Woke up in the middle of the school drop-off lane. I was determined to drive myself over to urgent care, but my son's principal made me sit in her office and took away my car keys. You'd think that I would mellow out a bit. But once my mother-in-law drove me to urgent care, the doctor there said I had to go to the hospital by ambulance. I kid you not, I looked him in the eyes and said, I don't really have time for that.
Classic case of doing everything right there.
I know, seriously. She goes on, I really believed that I was failing if I let myself stop or even slow down. In the end, she says, I had a cracked skull, a major concussion, and a brain bleed from hitting my head on the concrete. What that meant, 6 months of no driving, her control was gone. A few years of not being able to walk in a straight line because her control was diminished. And what she can only call a trauma-induced ADHD, or what she refers to as control to chaos. And that's driving her insane. She says, that's what it took for me to lose some control. It gave me weeks to stare at my bedroom ceiling and think. I figured out some things, my worth and the worth of my ideas. I negotiated down from 40 hours a week to 25 to 30 hours at the same salary. It forced me to look at my products and realize that I was creating things I thought I should instead of what I wanted. It made me streamline everything so I could keep up. I keep a schedule for me and not for people looking in from the outside. I upfront say no to things I don't want or need to do. You can't eat off my floors anymore. The only thing I bake these days are brownies from a box. My backyard is atrocious. I forget everything and am now the queen of list making and phone alarms. But I have a shop I enjoy running. And products I like. I spend more fun time with my kids, which feeds the creativity of all of us. Changes to the routine don't send me into a panic because there is room for the unexpected now. So failing to keep up and having that control ripped out of my hands was a blessing in my business and my life. God knows I wouldn't have voluntarily handed it over. And there's a big LOL at the end.
I mean, I think the story is super relatable to a lot of people. Obviously, probably much more dramatic and different. But I feel like there's a lot of women, especially, that they have a lot going on between kids and working and trying to keep a good home and all this stuff. And I feel like when you start to just not pay attention and forget about you and all of that, it can really lead to some disastrous consequences, I think.
Yeah. I know this was a huge wake-up call for Alyssa, and none of us want to get to that point. It probably happens more often than we think, especially if we feel the need to be so incredibly driven and to live this perfect I can do everything kind of life. But I think it just, her story, and Alyssa, thank you for letting us share it, and for sharing it with our community. Her story really emphasizes the need to just take a step back once in a while, pay attention to what our body is telling us and to our stress levels, and take a breather and lighten the load a little bit.
I think that one of the exercises that's really good for this one, because I think a lot of that stuff happens in our life because after a while we've just said yes to everything, and there's a lot of like fear that goes around to saying no to people or not doing things that, you know, would make us look a particular way. And I think when we start to look at things about letting go and like the consequences of it, or what we're going to do if we do certain things, is the exercise of like saying, so what? And then just keep saying, so what? And like write down, like, if I do this, what happens? Like, what is the biggest fear? And then so what? And then you keep so whatting for, you know, about 5 or so what's. And then you realize like most of this stuff is just driven by these, you know, expectations that you've put on yourself, that you think society's put on you, that you're really trying to look perfect. And at a certain level, you just kind of have to say, the people who love me don't care. I just don't care anymore. You know, and being there and present for your kid is worth more than, you know, a really nice looking backyard.
For sure. So I think it's important to recognize too that there is, like, it doesn't have to be related to health. You know, we know that a lot of makers struggle with chronic illness of some form. And in a future episode of the podcast, I interview one of our community members who does deal with a chronic illness, an autoimmune disorder. So we can dive into that in the podcast a little bit more. But it even comes down to just day-to-day stuff. And I know that I've had experiences where, you know, I'm like, oh, my body's trying to tell me something. I need to act on this. I know, Sharon, you've had some. So I don't know, Sharon, do you want to share any examples of some of the instances where you've paid attention to your body and or learned to for any particular reason?
Well, I think I shared this last time, is the one about hunger and knowing that I get hangry. And making sure that, like, if I start to go into, you know, a mood where I'm like, oh man, I am kind of just like annoyed with everybody right now. What's the deal? You know? And maybe it is that I am just really passionate about something, but usually when it's like, you know, little things or whatever, it's usually that you know, a good possible reason is that I'm hungry. And so that's one thing that I do a lot. The other thing is that, so, I mean, I think I've talked about this a lot before, but I have fibromyalgia, and like anyone who has had like an illness like that just knows like the whole process of getting diagnosed and figuring that out is just such a traumatic, horrible issue of like, what is going on with my body? You just have no idea. And it takes a long time to figure that out. Right. And you all of a sudden realize there's just things you cannot do before. So I've really had to ingrain into myself that like, I can't do everything. So that is like a big thing just in my life daily. It's like not putting pressure on myself to do everything, that I have to, you know, figure out what is the most manageable, you know, chunk that I can do, prioritize that. And then what's the bonus stuff that I could possibly do. But I think a big one is for me is like, if I am tired, like I have to lay down, like, or I just know that it's going to get worse. So, and I think that's a big thing too, is like knowing what the reaction is out of this. Oh my gosh, my dog is now licking himself. Turner, could you be any more obnoxious today? Thank you. This is going to be a fun one to cut out on the podcast. Sorry, Isaac. I think knowing like what the result is too, like what happens when I ignore this, right? So what happens when I ignore hunger is that I become irritable. What happens when I ignore being tired? Like I will literally get into this like crazy flu-like state if I don't, you know, pay attention to that, right? And I will just become like even worse than I was before. Like, so knowing that like the results of what ignoring is like a big one too, because if you can just always remember that, like, you know, is it worth pushing through? Like, I know for so many makers, like hands are a big deal, right? And there's like so many people with carpal tunnel, things like that. And like pushing through, you just know you're doing more damage to your hands, right? Like it's like an athlete who's like trying to walk off an injury. And I was like, sometimes, oh my God, he just farted. Like seriously, he just made a noise that sounded like this. Anyways, he's doing everything he can.
Harder editing the podcast.
Yeah, right? He's just laying down looking innocent now. Okay, so I think, you know, this idea of like walking off an injury is like such an antiquated one now, right? Like you obviously like need to get back up, but first you need to actually evaluate if something is going wrong before you keep plowing through. So if you know that your hands are getting crampy and that it's getting hard, like maybe now's the time to take a break and be good to them. Otherwise you're going to break them. Otherwise you're going to have a surgery, which, by the way, if you want to have carpal tunnel surgery, like I really think you should investigate it because it can fix things. That's just a side note from knowing a few people now that have had it. And I'm like, what? You can fix carpal tunnel? No idea. Anyways, but that you're going to be, you know, ruining yourself later on if you just keep pushing through things. So that's a big one.
Yeah. So I wanted to share a couple things that people shared in the chat. Lori, hi Lori, said that her mom was a teacher and literally worked herself to death. She died 2 years into retirement at the age of 58. I learned through watching her try to do it all as a single parent to not take anything too seriously, especially business. That's so true. And it's really unfortunate that was such a tough and drastic lesson to learn. But that is so true, Lori. Alyssa added as well that anxiety is really my warning sign. She says, I get anxious over ridiculous things and I know I need to step back. That's a really good warning sign right there. I think that's one of the things is understanding what your warning signs are. Like you said, Sharon, you know, knowing that if you're getting irritable, that's a symptom or a warning sign that you need to eat something. I love
this, Alyssa, because I think the anxiety stuff for me is when that one happens, like I know that there's certain things, because anxiety is actually pretty unusual for me. I feel like that's when I kind of know like I'm in another level and I really have to like do certain things like meditate or whatever to make that go away. So I'm excited for actually next week when I think Carrie is going to help us really talk about that too, because I think when anxiety happens, like, I mean, I know some people have like anxiety conditions, that's like a whole different thing. But like, if anxiety is not usually part of normal life for you, when anxiety does come up, I think that is a big time to learn to have a self-care routine, because it's not going away on its own usually, or it's just like getting stuffed down. It's going to come back up later really bad.
Yeah, it's true. I want to share an experience of my own that is, well, it feels like it pales in comparison, but I think it'll help illustrate even little things can help. So, you know, I spend a lot of time working at my computer. And I have the type of personality or behavioral trait where I will get stuck into work and hyper focus. It's probably borderline ADHD, where I'll just be like,
self-diagnose over here. I'm just gonna armchair psychiatrist. And basically, I'll end up like I'll look up the, you know, 90 minutes, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours have gone by. And I'm like hunched over the keyboard because I've been typing so much and I'm squinting at the screen and my eyes have gone buggy and my shoulders and neck are all tensed up and everything. Well,
a long time ago, I got into a regular quasi self-care routine, quasi treat yourself routine of getting a monthly massage. But I got to the point where I realized that it wasn't enough, and that having a massage once a month wasn't going to correct that kind of stuff or reset my muscles in that way. And there was a point a while back where Sharon and I were on a conference call, and planning out Academy of Handmade stuff, and it was, our calls usually push 2 hours. And it was toward the end of the call, and I was like, I just thought to myself, I need to stand up. And I got up out of my chair and stood up as far as my headphone cord would let me. And I was like, this is totally different. And Sharon, I don't know if you remember this. This was like a couple months ago. But basically I was like, okay, I'm sold. I need a standing desk. Like, I need to be able to stand up and sit down. And so in the last, I think like 6 weeks ago, I invested in a standing desk, and it has been hugely helpful for me. I mean, I'm standing right now, and it's great. But it's made vast improvements already on my posture and my muscle tension and my ability to work. And what I found is that it ends up helping me shift my tasks in a way that, like, I can only stand for so long, right? And then I need to sit down, and like the act of, I don't have one of those fancy motorized sit stand desks. I have to like crank it. And so like the act of cranking it down for a minute with the hand crank, it like gets the blood flowing a little bit, and then just like helps me shift gears into something else. And that's been hugely helpful.
I think standing desk situation, I blame him for why Facebook all of a sudden decided to, like, he started asking people about standing desk in his feed. And then all of a sudden Facebook started serving me up standing desk ads. It was like, thanks, Isaac. I know exactly what triggered this.
You're welcome, Sharon. I'm glad I could bring that to you.
You're being creepy.
So the other thing I wanted to share. So my husband Justin has had occasionally he gets these intense food cravings, and I always thought they were really weird. And he'd be like, I need seafood, or I really, really, really need to eat some broccoli. Or I really feel the need for steak or a burger or something like that. And what he's learned over the years is that as his body senses an imbalance in whatever nutrition it feels it needs, he will actually start craving that food. And we've learned to pay attention to that and react to that. So like if he feels the sudden urge to eat some shrimp, we're going to go out to the store and get some shrimp. Like that's how it goes, because that helps his body kind of self-regulate that way.
No, I think that's so good. I mean, obviously don't listen to your body if it just wants candy all the time, but that's another thing. That's another thing that's going on. But I totally think so too. Like I mean, yes, sometimes maybe you do just need a chocolate bar or whatever, but like, I do think our bodies are telling us things a lot of times, and we're just, not always listening good enough. Back to the thing about the positioning and like how you have to stand and everything, and kind of you're saying about the massages, I do think like I'm totally on board with doing those monthly things of like treating yourself. Like I think like they talk about how like women are actually really good about that kind of self-care, because they're usually going out for like manicures and pedicures and taking that time to sort of like relax. But I think it's such a good point that should not be the thing that's fixing that one little day. Isn't fixing all of the other ills. It's like, eating candy for like, all month. And then that one day you're like, I'm just eating vegetables and juice. Like that doesn't like cancel the rest of it out if you've had all these other bad habits.
Yeah. There's a difference between paying attention and being proactive about preventing stress or health or whatever, or mental issues, and like coping with them. Right.
Yeah. Yes, totally. Yeah. And like, there's a difference between like sort of like taking care of yourself in this like I'm going to treat myself. But if it's not a treat, if you're trying to mask it to fix the ills that came before it, like, oh, I need this pedicure because this whole month I've been, you know, basically like being garbage to myself. Like that's not really what the point of all of that is. So
yeah.
We did have a poll, you guys. I should have mentioned this earlier about when was the last time you stopped and took care of yourself because your body told you.
Has anybody answered it yet?
One person has answered within the last
polls
week.
Button, friends, and
last week.
Tell us. Be honest.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything else that you guys wanted to add on this or questions? Holly says signing up for Hood to Coast. So that is a marathon, I believe.
Relay. Right.
Yeah. So from Mount Hood to the coast, I'm guessing was what that is, has been the best, worst thing for me as it forces me to schedule time to run. Yeah. I know a lot of people schedule like half marathon situations in their lives as if the thing, because you know you cannot run those, just like show up, stay up. You can if you would like to really do yourself in. That's a disaster waiting to happen. Yeah. But I know that people do those as a way to motivate themselves to continue with exercise and self-care. So that, yeah, I totally get that. The one thing I wonder, Holly, is do you ever wind up weirdly beating up on yourself if you miss goals and things like that within that? Like, does it cause anxious? No. Okay, good. Alyssa, bi-weekly, she's dropping a curse word, cleared it out. Bi-weekly bee sessions with my friends at Starbucks. Yeah, I mean, that can be good too, especially as makers when we're in a business where we're very isolated and it can just kind of not be, we don't like have coworkers to sort of like let things out all the time. And so to kind of like hash that through with other people can be really helpful. It can make you feel less isolated. It can make you feel less just like crazy because you're just thinking like, a lot of times you'll do, and we talked about this last month, that we'll just kind of like impose weird rules on ourselves. And then we'll realize nobody else is doing these weird rules. And we're like, oh, I guess now that I see that these other people have not made these, they're functioning fine. Like I can let go of this because this other person has let go of it. So Lori says, I'm a book and a bath girl. You know what? That is something I love too. And I wish our bath here was better at that. But yes. I need a soaking tub in my life is what I realize more and more to get the max enjoyment out of a bath. Making it like really deep. So
yeah.
But I think, yeah, like if you can find those ways to like make sure that you get treated, I guess, but also then making sure that it's not at the expense of just like, it's not the thing that you're using to not listen to your body the rest of the time too. So, yeah. Lori says she needs her hot tub fixed. When you do, Lori, I'm coming over because I do love me a jacuzzi.
Sure. Some good stuff.
So, and not one that's filled with bowling balls. Isaac's home renovations stories.
To set the record straight, bowling balls were not in the old hot tub at this house.
Oh, okay.
They were buried under a bunch of rocks to build up the landscaping. We had 2-liter bottles filled with water in the bottom of the hot tub.
That's what it was.
No, that was
creepy. Mm-hmm.
Life with the weird ghosts of this house. So I think I wanted to, if any of you have questions about listening to your body or how to deal with certain things, especially related to the holidays, let us know. Throw it up in the chat or in the questions area. I think the last thing I wanted to touch on is just helping us be aware of why we might not listen to our bodies. Mm. I think that's, I don't know. I feel like at least if we can understand why we're not, it may help us be a little more aware of when we're not and help us get around that. So one of the reasons that for me that always comes up is that I either justify it to myself or I convince myself that my brain knows better than my body does. I'm just like, no, it's fine. Really, you're crazy, body. I don't know what you're talking about. And I think that happens a lot, that we either overthink or do what Alyssa did and said, I don't have time for this. When we're staring down the face of something going wrong. I think another
we fear stopping. We fear stopping and what stopping might mean. And that somehow that stopping means like death or like that, you know, failure. It's a very weird, you know, idea, but obviously like we all have it in our brains at some level that like if we somehow stop what we're doing. My husband actually, I shouldn't tell too many stories on him, but he does get anxious about stuff a lot. And so he gets really stressed out when deadlines happen, things like that. And he you know, he's a very responsible person, but always is like, gets worried about, you know, if he has deadlines and what if something is late. And I was like, what if something is late? I mean, unless you're like a brain surgeon, like the stakes are pretty low in the world of planning and bike building. Like there's not like, if you're a week late on something, it's not the end of the world. Oh, well, if people might be frustrated or disappointed with you, they can shove it. Like, and because most of the things that, you know, why we might be late or why we might have to stop or why we might have to, you know, give ourselves extra time to do something, it's usually not even ever our faults. Like it's not because it's rarely because we're like, oh, I'm just going to be, it's not because we're lazy. Like it's usually external things. So if somebody wants to blame us for that, because we've decided that like, we're not going to be maniacs in order to, you know, get something done earlier, you know, we're not going to quote unquote, make magic happen. Like, I mean, oh, well, like, if you know, I know makers that like have put their shops on hold and have, you know, they've had things come up in their life where they've had to tell customers, you know, I can't fulfill your order in time because of something crazy. And most of the time, like everyone's like, that's fine, I get it. Even at Christmas time, like most of the time these people are rooting for you and they want you to succeed, and they're not going to be, you know, if you have a good reason for it and you've not shown yourself to be a terrible person this whole time, like and most of the time, if somebody is terrible, you can just go somewhere on Facebook and bitch about it and let them, and most everyone who's going to tell you like this person is terrible, ignore them. Like, don't feel bad by that person. So,
yeah. I think that kind of fits in with the second point I wanted to make on that. A reason why we don't listen to our bodies is that we feel the need to meet the expectations of other people, whether those are constructed by ourselves incorrectly or falsely, or whether they're actual expectations. It's about learning to say no and learning to prioritize your needs over the needs of others, or the needs that you think others have of you.
Holly says, I ended up lengthening my lead time for wholesale orders from 2 weeks to 14 business days so I can rest on weekends, and it's terrifying, but it's worked out. I mean, I think that's great. And I think, you know, it's unlikely that you're really going to probably miss out on too many orders because of that. So, and then Alyssa added, if I push myself after my body says stop, what I produce usually sucks anyways. It's really true. You're probably not at your best anyways. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever gone back and read the papers they wrote after an all-nighter. They were not the brilliance you thought they were. Didn't Isaac talked about this last week too, when you made the cuffs?
Oh yeah.
And you're like, these are garbage anyways.
Yeah, no. And even like, I'm thinking back to last week, I was late on getting the podcast together, or 2 weeks ago, I guess it was. And I texted Sharon at like, I don't know, it was almost 11 o'clock at night before the podcast was supposed to publish. I was like, I can't do this. We need to just wait. Like, is it the end of the world if it doesn't go out at 4 a.m. on a Tuesday? No.
Yeah, totally.
And it ended up like the next morning I was able to like take a fresh look at it, and it was so much better than had I tried to power through and stay up another couple hours to finish it.
Yeah, totally.
I know a little bit for that, but
don't resent Isaac for it. It's on my list of things Isaac has disappointed me.
Business divorce imminent. All right. Well, we're actually over time. This has been a really, really fantastic discussion. I wanted to just thank Alyssa for being willing to let us share her story and for being here in the chat to contribute as well. It was great to see you there and to have that. I mean, like I said, it's a really powerful example of how bad things could go wrong. So don't let this happen to you.
Don't learn your lessons the hard way. Learn them the easy way. Let Alyssa be a warning.
From what I understand, she's on a much better path now. So
she says, "Learn from my stupidity."
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. This has been another episode of Your Handmade Business TV. And we're glad to have you. Next week with Carrie Berkey, I will not be here, but Sharon and Carrie will be going to town about
creating a self-care routine.
Thank you.
We always forget what the next one is.
But I do remember, so then we're going to be off for Thanksgiving. And because like who wants to, I mean, you guys are going to be busy eating and I'm going to be busy eating.
You guys don't want a Your Handmade Business TV where Isaac just has like cranberry sauce in his beard. Sharon has gravy in her hair.
That's true. But we will be back the following week with, well, we just confirmed our guest. We're going to have a guest. Mm-hmm. So it'll be three of us. Carolyn Cafelli? How do you say your last name? From The Wishing Elephant.
I don't know. Cafelli.
Sorry, Carolyn, we're butchering your name. It's fine. At least I knew what shop she was from. Yeah. Anyway, so take care of yourself, listen to your body, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks. Bye.